They tried to publicly guilt me into giving up my house, so I publicly claimed my $8.3 million inheritance. Hi, I'm Luke, 31, and I turned 30 in a private dining room under an expensive chandelier right before my mom announced 18 people that I should sell my house and hand the money to my pregnant sister. When I say the room went dead silent, I don't mean in a cinematic pause for effect kind of way. I mean, forks clinked mid-air, Tiffany stopped mid-sip, and the waiter froze like he'd walked into the middle of a hostage negotiation. It was my birthday 30th, and apparently, my family decided that was the perfect occasion to stage a live intervention about my selfishness. The plan? Publicly pressure me into giving up the one thing I own outright, my house, to fund my sister's baby nest. Their words, not mine. My mother, naturally, delivered the toast. She stood at the head of the table with her wine glass lifted like she was about to give a TED Talk on maternal manipulation. First came the fake warmth. We're all so proud of you, darling. And then, like clockwork, the sudden pivot. But it's time you made a real contribution to this family's future. The cousins leaned in. My sister Natalie put her hand on her stomach like she was carrying the next messiah instead of a 6-week-old fetus. My dad gave his usual half smile, which I've since come to recognize as code for I agree, but I won't say it first. And then she said it. We all agree you should sell your house and give the money to your sister's baby fund. She needs it more. The audacity, the clarity, the straight-up boardroom energy of it. She even had the nerve to add, "You're single. You don't need that much space." I couldn't even speak at first. Not because I was in shock, because I wasn't. I'd expected some guilt trip. A little, help your sister out. Maybe a pitch in for a nursery. But this was a full-blown asset seizure staged over filet mignon. I looked around the room. Jessica was smirking. Brandon was nodding like this was rational behavior. Natalie dabbed fake tears and whispered something about sacrifice. The same Natalie, mind you, who spent $40,000 on a Bora Bora honeymoon and once called my house basic. They all expected me to fold, like always. But then something happened. My phone buzzed. A new email. I glanced at it out of habit. It was from my lawyer. I tapped it open, scanned the first line, and smiled. Oh, they had no idea. Actually, I said, standing up slowly, my voice calm and low. I've got something I'd like to share too. And then I read it. Word for word. The inheritance. The $8.3 million. The properties. The stocks. The fact that I was now the sole heir to my late Uncle Bernard's entire estate. Forks dropped. Natalie stopped dabbing. And my mother? Pale as the linens. The silence after I finished reading was so thick, it felt like another guest at the table. My mother's jaw was clenched so tight I could hear it grind. Natalie's fork had actually fallen to her plate, clattering louder than it should have in that dead quiet room. My dad just blinked like he couldn't decide if this was real or just another business investment gone sideways. Uncle Bernard? My mother finally whispered, her voice brittle. He never told us he was ill. Took a slow sip of my wine. That's because he didn't tell you. He told me. We talked every week. I visited him every month, even after he moved to the nursing home. You were all too busy. Her face twitched. You should have. I should have what? Given you notice. So you could talk him out of it? I laughed, short and sharp. He left everything to me because I was the only one who didn't treat him like a burden. Brandon let out a low whistle. Tiffany mouthed something to Jessica. My Aunt Patricia cleared her throat like she wanted to say something profound, then chickened out and stabbed her salad instead. I bought that house with money I earned, I said, turning back to my mother. 70-hour work weeks, eating ramen in a showbox studio for 5 years. That place was the first thing I ever had that was completely mine. My mother straightened her spine. But your sister is pregnant. She's 6 weeks along and doesn't even know the gender yet, but sure. Let's talk real estate like the stork's already decorating the nursery. Natalie's eyes welled up again, this time with real panic. We just thought you'd understand. You've always been so generous. That was the moment I felt it snapped the last fraying thread of guilt I'd carried for years. I had always been generous. $5,000 for her wedding. $15,000 to help my parents' mortgage. Bail money for Brandon. And they all acted like it was my duty. I stood taller. You want to know what I'm going to do with my house? A glimmer of hope sparked in Natalie's eyes. I'm keeping it. I'm renovating it. Pool, home theater, wine cellar, maybe even a library. And I'm going to enjoy every inch of it, alone, without a single ounce of guilt. My father finally spoke. You're being cruel, oh, I said, my voice steady. I'm being done. Done being your safety net. Done being your ATM. Done pretending this family is anything but a leech with matching Christmas sweaters. I tossed my napkin onto my plate. The meal's paid for. Consider it my final contribution. Then I walked out, leaving 18 stunned relatives and one absolutely wrecked birthday cake behind. I didn't cry in the car. I thought I might. Adrenaline makes your emotions weird. And the last time I'd stood up to my mother, I was 12 and grounded for a month because I told her she wasn't the queen of the universe. But this time, sitting in my driver's seat with the echo of their silence still ringing in my ears, I felt something different. Free. My phone started buzzing before I even backed out of the parking lot. First, it was my mother, 3 missed calls in rapid succession. Then a voicemail that began with, "How dare you," before I hit delete. Then Natalie, crying through text. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made mom cry. I'm pregnant." Then my dad, trying his best at emotional blackmail. "Your mother is devastated." This wasn't the time or place. Wasn't the time? They ambushed me on my birthday. By the time I got home, my cousin Melissa had texted, "I can't believe they did that. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." That was the only message I replied to. Just a simple thank you. I poured a glass of whiskey and sat in the stillness of my living room. My living room. The place I'd worked like hell to afford. Hardwood floors I refinished myself. Walls I painted after work on weekends. Every inch of this place had my sweat in it. And they wanted it gone. Just like that. I opened my laptop and reread the email from my lawyer. It was real. Uncle Bernard's estate, 8.3 million, was officially mine. Properties, liquid assets, investments, including the Lake Tahoe cabin I remembered visiting once as a kid. Before my mother threw a fit over sleeping arrangements and made us leave early, he'd left me a letter. 2. I'll have a courier deliver it to your address tomorrow. The email read, "Your uncle requested that it be given only after the estate was finalized." A sealed letter from Uncle Bernard. The man no one in the family had time for. The man I'd sat with in a nursing home every Sunday while the rest of them posted family brunch photos on Instagram. He used to say, "Blood is just plumbing. Family is who shows up." I think he meant me. Another message buzzed in. This one from an unknown number. Grant. Natalie's husband. She's pregnant and stressed. This isn't good for the baby. Can't you just be the bigger person? I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. I texted back, "The bigger person? I paid for your wedding photographer. I bought your wife's bridesmaid dresses. And now, you want my house? Tell Natalie the next time she plans a family ambush, she should check her own bank account first." Blocked. That night, I slept better than I had in years, and in the morning, there was a man at my door holding a thick envelope. Uncle Bernard had finally had the last word. I held the envelope like it was radioactive. Uncle Bernard's handwriting shaky, but unmistakable, curled across the front in blue ink. "For Luke. Open once the dust settles." That was so him. Always a little dramatic. A little dry in his humor. Always watching the family chaos from a safe distance, like he was timing his popcorn refills. I sat at the kitchen table, the one I'd built from scratch during lockdown, and opened the letter with the kind of reverence normally reserved for final exam results or love confessions. Inside was a thick sheet of creamy stationery that still smelled faintly like old books and menthol. His cologne. I remembered it from childhood hugs and Sunday visits. "Dear one, if you're reading this, then I've officially caused a stir." Good. It was long overdue. I laughed out loud. Of course he knew. "You're probably getting texts, voicemails, drive-by guilt trips. Your mother's probably halfway to organizing a family intervention. Let her try. You've spent enough of your life playing the responsible one, the peacekeeper, the wallet. I've watched for years as they bled you dry. The silent withdrawals from your time, your energy, your accounts. Never with gratitude, always with expectation. I want you to know something, Luke. Being generous is not a flaw, but letting people weaponize your kindness, that's where it breaks you." I felt a sharp ache in my throat. I left you everything, not to spite the rest of them, but because you earned it in ways they never will. Not by showing up once in a while, but by being there when no one else bothered. When I got lonely, when I forgot things, when I told the same story for the third time, and you still listened like it mattered. Use the money however you want. Buy a ridiculous car, start your own company, or don't. Just know that you never owe it to anyone who tries to guilt you out of it. Most of all, I hope this gives you the freedom to say no. That word's more powerful than any dollar sign. Live well, dear one. And please don't answer their calls just because it's Christmas. Especially if they open with, "We've been thinking." That's always code for, "We want something." All my love, Uncle Bernard. I wiped my eyes, and I don't cry often. Not from pain. Definitely not from letters. But he'd seen me. Really seen me. Not as the successful one, or the guy with the good job, or the house haver. Just Luke, the kid who used to bring him crossword puzzle books and sit with him through reruns of Bonanza. The guy who quietly picked up everyone else's slack until the day he didn't. My phone buzzed. Another voicemail from Mom. Something about shame and disrespect. Delete. Then a text from Natalie. "I'm sorry you're so bitter. I hope one day you'll understand what family actually means." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked outside to my garden, sat on the porch swing I'd installed myself, and let the late afternoon sun hit my face. That letter was a permission slip. To live louder. To choose myself. To never again feel bad for saying no. The next few days felt like detoxing from a family-sized emotional hangover. I blocked half the numbers in my phone. Anyone who called just to demand, guilt, or speculate got sent straight to the digital void. Every ping, every buzz, every "how could you do this to your sister?" got quieter and quieter until my phone felt more like mine and less like a customer service hotline for entitled relatives. Melissa, bless her, kept texting little check-ins. "You okay?" I told my mom I wasn't going to the next family dinner. "You inspired me. Still proud of you." She was the only one who'd shown even a flicker of shame during that disaster dinner, and the only one who seemed to want to build something real outside of the Ashford circus. A week later, I got a package from the nursing home where Uncle Bernard had spent his final years. Inside was a handwritten thank you note from one of the nurses. "He talked about you all the time. Said you were the only one who made him feel like he still mattered. Thank you for showing up." Underneath was an invite. They were hosting a small memorial for the residents who'd passed that year. Would I like to say a few words? I went. I stood in front of 24 elderly strangers and a handful of staff. And I talked about Uncle Bernard's awful jokes, his obsession with old westerns, his love of black coffee so strong it could strip paint. I talked about the way he saved the Sunday comics for me like a kid, even when he was 83. Afterwards, a woman named Martha came up to me. "He was so proud of you," she said, patting my arm. "He said you were the only one who didn't treat him like a responsibility." That night, I cried again. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt something I hadn't in years. Loved, without strings. 2 weeks later, the renovations began. I started simple, updated the kitchen, ripped out the old carpet, started planning a home office in the basement. No pool yet. That would come. Work felt different now. I cut my hours, started sketching plans for my own consulting firm. The freedom in it was exhilarating. I didn't need the job anymore, but I wanted the work on my own terms. That distinction felt like a luxury. Then, one night, while I was baking frozen pizza and watching a terrible sci-fi movie, the doorbell rang. I checked the security camera. My mother, standing on my porch like a horror movie extra, clutching her purse like it was holy scripture. My dad was with her, hands in pockets, eyes low. I didn't answer, didn't turn on the porch light, just watched them knock, plead, escalate. Eventually, I texted, "Leave my property, or I'm calling the police." They left. But for the first time in 30 years, they didn't leave with a piece of me. 3 days later, grandmother called. No guilt trip. No performance. Just 4 words. "Come have tea tomorrow." So I did. She lived in a quiet cottage 2 towns over, surrounded by hydrangeas and silence. The moment she opened the door, knew something was different. She looked at me not like someone who needed something, but like someone who saw something. "You look taller," she said as I stepped inside. "I didn't grow, Grandma." "No, but you stopped shrinking." The kettle was already on. The table set with mismatched teacups and cookies that tasted like she actually used real butter. We didn't talk about the rest of the family at first. She asked about the house, the renovations, the cabin in Tahoe. Then, without looking up from pouring the tea, she said, "Bernard called me. Before he died." I froze. "He told me he was leaving everything to you." Asked if I thought it would cause a fuss. She looked up then, as sharp as ever. I told him it absolutely would, and that he should do it anyway. I stared at her. "You knew?" She nodded. "Your mother's been who she is for a long time. Entitled, fragile, always seeing other people's resources as her solution. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you needed to get angry enough to say no on your own. Otherwise, you'd still be handing them pieces of yourself. Thinking that's what love is." We sat in silence for a moment. "She called me after the party," Grandma continued, "screaming, crying, blaming me for corrupting you. I reminded her I'm 83 years old, have my own money, and am too old to be manipulated with birthdays and baby bumps." I laughed, really laughed. "She doesn't understand why you won't just share. But she's never asked what it cost you to give in all those times. She just sees the no as betrayal. She always made me feel like no meant I didn't love them," I admitted. "And now, it means I finally love myself enough to stop bleeding for people holding knives." Grandma nodded, sipping her tea like she was at peace with the world. "Your grandfather would be proud. He hated family drama, but adored family honesty. And that birthday dinner?" She smiled. "That was the most honest Ashford gathering we've had in decades. I stayed for hours. When I left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, 'Don't backslide. Guilt is just their last attempt at control.'" She was right. Back home, I lit a fire, opened a bottle of wine, and scrolled through my inbox. There it was, another message from Natalie. This time, sonogram photo attached. Caption, "Can't believe you're missing this." I stared at it for a full minute before deleting it. You can't miss what you were never really invited into with love. 3 months after the birthday ambush, I moved. Not far, just to one of the investment properties Uncle Bernard had left me. A mid-century modern beauty tucked into a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It had privacy, security, and no shared history of betrayal woven into its walls. Best of all, no one in my family knew the address. My old house? Rented out to a lovely couple with a baby on the way. The irony wasn't lost on me. The new place had a library with built-in shelves, a sunken living room, and a view of the hills that made me feel like I'd finally stepped into the life I was supposed to be living. I hosted small dinners with friends, had lazy mornings without my phone blowing up, and slowly started designing the home office that would launch my own consulting firm. The peace was addictive, and then Natalie came knocking, literally. The doorbell rang on a random Thursday afternoon, and there she was on my security camera, months pregnant, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a way that screamed exhaustion rather than style. I almost didn't answer, but some tiny flicker of curiosity, maybe mercy, got the better of me. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Natalie?" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Grant left me," I blinked. "What?" "He said he didn't want to be a dad. That he only agreed because I pushed him into it. He moved out last week, took his stuff and left a note." She swallowed hard, voice cracking. "I don't know what to do." The old me would have hugged her, would have offered the guest room, opened a spreadsheet, and mapped out her budget and baby needs. But the old me was gone, buried somewhere between the appetizer course and the $8.3 million inheritance email. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said honestly, "but I'm not the person to help you." Her lip trembled. "But you're my brother." "No," I said quietly. "I was the family wallet. And you broke that trust. You didn't just ask for help, you expected it. You tried to publicly pressure me into giving up my home. That wasn't love. That was entitlement in heels." "I was scared," she whispered. I thought you'd understand. You've always had it together." "I worked to have it together, Nat. I sacrificed. I planned. I said no to things, expensive trips, impulse buys, comfort, so that I could build a future. You spent $40,000 on a honeymoon and then tried to guilt me for not selling my house. That's not scared. That's irresponsible." She wiped her face. "So that's it? You're just done?" "I'm done rescuing people who think I owe them. I hope the baby is healthy. I hope you figure things out. But this us? You've got to rebuild that from scratch." She didn't argue, didn't scream or cry. She just stood there, broken in a way I hadn't seen before. I closed the door gently, not slamming it like in a movie, but with the finality of someone who knew it had to be done. Then I turned off my phone and went back to drafting proposals for my firm. It hurt. Of course, it did. But not like before. This pain was clean, like pulling out a splinter that had been there so long, you forgot it wasn't supposed to be. 6 months after that dinner, I stood in the backyard of my new home, barefoot in the grass, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sky in silent gold. Peace doesn't come all at once. It sneaks in slowly, one ignored voicemail at a time, one deleted text, one morning where you don't flinch at your phone lighting up. I hadn't spoken to my parents since they showed up at my door demanding a conversation they weren't ready to have. Natalie had gone quiet too, which honestly surprised me more than anything. I heard through Melissa that she'd moved back in with our parents and was raising the baby there. Grant never came back. The birthday incident, according to family whispers, was now the day Luke snapped. A convenient rewriting of the truth that made them the victims and me the bitter millionaire. Let them have it. If it meant they left me alone, they could call it whatever they wanted. I'd taken that piece and turned it into something real. My consulting firm launched last month. Small team, hand-picked clients, projects I actually care about. No more being someone else's workhorse. No more smiling through being undervalued. Ashley and Derek threw me a little launch party with cake, cheap champagne, and more real love than I'd felt in 30 years of birthdays combined. My goddaughter gave me a hand-drawn CEO of Awesome certificate. It's framed on my desk. Melissa visits once a month now. She's setting boundaries of her own. She still struggles, but she's trying, and I respect that. Sometimes I reread Uncle Bernard's letter when doubt creeps in. When the old guilt ghosts whisper, maybe you were too harsh. But then I remember, I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped rebuilding them alone. And if anyone ever wants to cross one again, they can bring the wood, the nails, and a sincere apology. I'll provide the hammer. The rest my money, my time, my peace, that stays mine. Always.